Luddite, please.
Welcome to the smoking section. My name is Emily Ouija and joining me is Stephen Helfer. Now tonight we have a very special guest joining us via Skype, again from the UK. His name is Christopher Snowdon and he is a very erudite individual, I would say. He's a writer and researcher and his official title is Head of Lifestyle Economics at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Welcome, Chris. How are you?
Very well, thanks.
Great. And do you actually prefer Chris or Christopher? I wanted to ask you.
Either is fine, Chris.
Okay. I guess I'll go with Chris then for now. So I wanted to start with talking about Velvet Glove, Iron Fist, which is actually the title of your blog, which you currently blog at, but it's also the title of one of your most well-known books, which is subtitled A History of Anti-Smoking. Now the term Velvet Glove, Iron Fist is somewhat familiar, but why did you choose that title?
Well, there was a phrase that happened to come up a few times in quotes in the book from various people. And also, I thought it summed up a couple of things which the book is really about. One of which is you've got this theme running through it. Anti-smoking campaigns started off as being basically educational and quite friendly, quite helpful. That's the Velvet Glove. And then become more and more forceful and evolve more and more coercion. And also, it kind of also alludes a bit to one of the other things in the book, which is that when you start off to tell smokers what to do, you end up telling people to eat, drink alcohol, and do various other things what to do. So it's about this encroaching nanny state, if you want to call it.
Very interesting. I'd say we've almost maybe moved beyond the Velvet Glove phase. At least I would say so. It seems like we're very firmly in the Iron Fist era. So speaking of the nanny state, I noted in one of your blog posts you explored the concept that nanny state is perhaps not even really an appropriate term, that it's maybe a little too soft.
Yeah, some people would prefer to use the term bully state, which I think is fair. The nanny state term comes from the 1960s. The Edward Spectator, I think, in the 1960s, used it in reference, I'm not quite sure what to. It could well have been something like just health warnings on cigarettes. But it was something that certainly we would see as very mild. And he saw as kind of finger wagging. He thought it was over the top. But the kind of public health policies that we have now couldn't have even been seriously imagined in the 1960s. So yeah, nanny as a term I'm not that keen on. I use it because the other side don't like it. They find it quite annoying to be called nanny, so I have used it for that.
Right.
But also, I think it is a legitimate thing to say that it's not really a harsh enough term for what these people are doing. Nannies are basically people who have the interests of their children at heart, and I'm not convinced at all that a lot of people in the anti-smoking lobby and the public health lobby generally actually have the interests of adult consumers, because we're not children, that's something different, but adult consumers at heart. I'm not sure about that at all. I think a lot of them are just bullies or narcissists or tyrants, or call it what you want, so yeah, there are pretty better terms out there, but that state does the truth.
Right, and one thing I actually I like about the term bully state is that it also implies the fact that people like smokers are actually being affected in their day-to-day lives. They're actually being discriminated against, made objects of scrutiny, and sometimes even more than scrutiny, of aggressive feeling or even hatred.
Yeah, it's out and out bullying, and it's even worse in America than it is here in the UK. I was reading a story a few days ago of the 66-year-old woman who's been made homeless because it's, I assume illegal.
That's right, it's terrible. Yeah.
Smoke inside, but also within 20 yards, I think, of the building. And the article ended by saying that the local government, is going to increase that to 25 yards quite soon. I mean, how petty can you get? This is just vindictive spitefulness.
Right. And I think a lot of the legislation has really led to ordinary people, non-smokers, just having negative feelings about smokers, which has made this kind of behavior possible.
Well, Chris, I don't know if you know it or not, but the federal government, in the form of the Department of Health and Human Services, sent out letters to every university and college in America pressuring them not only to ban smoking on their campuses, and even to ban the possession of tobacco, which of course means that if you are a smoker, it would be very difficult for you to be a student, a faculty member, or even an employee of a university.
Yeah, and it's absolutely shocking. I'm constantly amazed at how bad things are in America in particular.
Well, isn't Australia and New Zealand as bad or worse?
They're certainly up there. I think there's nowhere really as bad as parts of California, from what I can see. And I think parts of the eastern seaboard too. Australia is awful for it. But yeah, I mean, they're all pretty bad, don't get me wrong. And the UK is pretty horrendous too. We haven't really gone full on with banning smoking outdoors, but there is a big push for that now in parks and beaches. And there isn't yet any legislation about smoking in your house or in council property.
Which is now, I believe that's now being proposed in Canada, that it'll be banned in private homes that are not separate dwellings, freestanding dwellings.
Yeah, I can well believe it. This is obviously what the states have done with apartments that are owned by the state house, the federal housing. So yeah, we haven't gone that far yet, but this is, as you say, it's blatant bullying. At one point there was an argument that could be made for saying that some people are involuntarily exposed to passive smoking. You could have that kind of argument, but when it's people in their own homes or people on a windy beach or whatever, or indeed people using smokeless tobacco, there was clearly no negative externality from people using smokeless tobacco in a baseball ground, and yet it's being banned. And it's being banned very overtly on paternalistic grounds because there's clearly no other reason to do it.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. In Boston, smokeless tobacco is banned at baseball stadiums, which and really the reason they give for it now is to force people to stop using tobacco. Yeah. And
because it sets a poor example for youth.
Right, and they can't even see it in the case of smokeless tobacco. Using snus certainly, probably chew as well. So yeah, I mean, even now you will still hear them try and make some kind of argument along the lines of the children or bystanders, even if it's just, well, we don't want children seeing it. But it's very obviously, it's pretty half-hearted the way they even try and make these excuses. It's very obviously about making the lives of smokers and tobacco users as difficult and unpleasant as possible in the hope that they'll quit.
Absolutely, and to take a step back, I want to talk about, I was made aware that in 2010, you took part in an online debate about the question of whether lung cancer is actually caused by cigarette smoking. Because I think this is very much the cornerstone of how the modern anti-smoking history begins, is really with the scientific discovery that first-hand smoking, that is the smoker smoking themselves, is doing great harm to themselves and causing lung cancer. And I know that in this debate you took the position that smoking does indeed cause lung cancer, and do you still believe that to be the case?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind about it. I took part in that debate because Frank Davis was becoming skeptical about that, because he'd been following for several years the many lies and misrepresentations of the tobacco control lobby, and he started believing that it was all a lie. I don't believe that. There's no doubt in my mind at all that smoking causes lung cancer and several other diseases. I took part in that because it was interesting to go back to the original studies, which I guess a lot of people just simply take it for granted rather than to look at the original evidence. And the original evidence was as I thought. And for me, perhaps the most compelling part of the evidence, if anybody still does have any doubt of this, which it didn't have in 1964, the Surgeon General report, is you can now see over the course of the last 50 or 60 years, you can see the rise of smoking amongst men and then later amongst women, and you can see the rise of lung cancer starting later with women. There seems to be no other possible explanation for that. So, yeah.
What do you think of Dahl's 1950 study?
Well, it wouldn't really pass muster today. It's been a while since I saw it, but as I recall, this is the one where he looked at people who were already in hospital.
That's right. And
I think 99% of the people with lung cancer were smokers, which sounds pretty impressive. But I think something like 98% of all the other people in hospital were smokers. There was a lot of smoking going on there. Of course, 99% of the public won't smoke because it was very popular, but not 99%. So that would suggest perhaps that smoking was causing other diseases as well. But yeah, that in itself was clearly not.
Chris, I don't want to get into a debate because I'm not a strong partisan, terribly strong partisan in this issue, but it was interesting that as soon as Dahl did his study, the 1950 study, which was pretty rough, and it was a very rough study. He was the one who he diagnosed all the lung cancers himself. He immediately said that Britain should go into a full swing action in every way possible to publicize this. I mean, this was after basically one study, and this was something that Ronald Fisher was very critical of him for, not just because Ronald Fisher disagreed with the study itself, but because he said, wait a second, you really want to do all of this propagandizing based on this one study? So Dahl was ready to go from the start.
Yeah, I can't remember now exactly what the chronology was with that. I know he gave up smoking halfway through the study, if I recall right. He was a smoker himself when he started out with this. It's not as if he had some existing bias against smoking. And he said later that he actually didn't think it was very likely he was smoking. I think he believed it was the tarmacking of the roads or something that he thought was a more likely candidate at the time. But yeah, I mean, no one epidemiological study is going to prove anything in and of itself. Even in 1953, when there was a bit more evidence, it was still relatively low. There was a good case for pursuit. The tobacco industry were quite right in my view to question this and kick the tires of it for a good few more years. The idea that smoking should be banned in 1953, the case was closed, is clearly untrue. But by the time you get to the mid-60s, the case pretty was closed. Certainly, when the industry was still kind of nitpicking in the 70s and 80s, it's getting pretty pathetic.
Yeah, it was certainly a very interesting debate, and I'll post a link on our Facebook page after this, so anyone who's interested can take a look. But not to go too far down that path right now. I know that even though you believe that smoking causes lung cancer to smokers themselves, you reject basically the prevailing gospel that the anti-smoking crusade is based upon, that secondhand smoke and now third-hand smoke are injurious to other people's health. Is that correct? Do you think that's a fair?
Yes, I'm much more skeptical of that. I mean, third-hand smoke just doesn't exist, so it's not. Can you really, believe it?
Third-hand smoke, completely ridiculous.
There's no such thing, really.
I just wanted to mention, I saw, speaking of third-hand smoke, I was recently in a hospital. I was at a newborn intensive care unit visiting a family member's newborn, and they actually had leaflets there at the reception saying that if there was even a whiff of smoke on your jacket, that you shouldn't hold any of the babies in the ICU, right, because it could damage their respiratory system.
Really? Wow. It's amazing. As I say, it's mind-blowing what's been going on the last few years. But yeah, it is just basically the lingering smell, sometimes not even that. So I mean, there is no evidence at all really that that smoke could be harmed. They have worked hard. A lot of money has gone into trying to give this thing some legs, but it doesn't seem to be happening. I probably don't think it will happen. Leave aside your hospital and these kind of urban myth.
But I mean, even your friend. Even your friend Simon Chapman has weighed in against.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing. The third-hand smoke theory, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the third-hand smoke magic, really. The second-hand smoke thing, of course, is rather different because there is a big empirical epidemiological literature on that. I am pretty skeptical about the idea that second-hand smoke kills. Because I have looked at it, it's not that I dismiss the evidence, it's because I've read the evidence and I'm skeptical about it. I've mainly looked at lung cancer because I just that if it's going to cause any disease, that I'd like and it is lung cancer. And while I was writing Velvet Glove Iron Fist, I read literally every epidemiological studies that have been conducted. I summarised a large number of them in the appendix of the book. And I think just if you look at it, particularly if you read them, rather than just looking at the net results, although the net results tell you no, there just isn't really any path to it. There's just no consistency to the findings. It's so different to the active smoking because the active smoking was a magnitude stronger in terms of the effect on lung cancer, the increased risk, but also in the consistency of the results. Whereas with secondhand smoke, most of the studies typically don't see significant. Even if you don't believe in statistical significance, you certainly should do. A very large number of are below 1.0. In other words, it's less than that, so association, obviously negative association. There are slightly more studies that associate with the so-called protective effect. That's saying a great deal. There are some that show objective effect. The World Health Organization's study, which was huge, all over Europe, only managed to find one still association that was a protective effect of children, which didn't go down very well. So my conclusion is that if there is an increased risk, it's tiny, that it can't really be picked up by epidemiology. It's only been able to be suggested there is a link by using some rather dubious analysis and leaving out studies that I can. Right. I think that because we're dealing with such ultra low levels of risk, that publication bias, research bias, can easily explain the very slight increase in risk that comes about if you merge all these inconclusive studies together. I would be convinced if there was not consistency, and there just isn't any. So I don't think it's to worry about.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, as I understand it, as I always seen it, there certainly is not enough scientific evidence to justify so much far-reaching legislation for indoor smoking bans. But one point that I find really interesting about this is that isn't the success of state regulation, at least in the democracies that we live in, isn't it somewhat dependent, at least partly, on the sanction and acceptance of the public? So in other words, I do wonder whether there is some sort of anti-smoking zeitgeist in society at large that allowed this to happen.
Yeah, well, there was. I think as the number of smokers dwindled, the likelihood that smoking would be banned in more and more places became more likely. I mean, secondhand smoke, I think I quote Stan Glad saying something to this effect in the book. Secondhand smoke just validates the feelings of a significant number of people who don't want to be around other people's smoke. It's as simple as that. And it turns it into, rather than an issue matter of taste and preferences, it turns it into an issue of risk and external harm. And so it's completely validated those people's views, who, in my experience, there's not that many until you actually ban in. There didn't seem to be groundswell of support for smoking bans in Britain until it happened. So it validates that. But more importantly, it gives a weapon to anti-smoking zealots. There's a very small number of people who are determined to stamp out smoking. So that's why it became such a big issue, despite the fact that the evidence is so thin, right. Because it serves two purposes. On one hand, it helps anti-smoking people, eradicate smoking, and on the other, it does actually have a genuine constituency of people who are at least relatively supportive of acting.
And so, and in line with that, do you feel that there's a sort of cyclical nature to these kind of societal views about so-called vices like alcohol and tobacco? Do you think that this cycle will sort of come to an end, or that people's views will change gradually about so-called vices, or are we just living in a very health-conscious era?
Well, if they don't change, then we're doomed, aren't we? You have to be fairly optimistic about it. It's certainly true that, and you see this if you look at what's been considered to be addictive over the centuries. You see that some things have become fashionable, some things have become deeply unfashionable. In the book I show over the course of 500 years that smoking has come in and massively out of fashion. Whether I imagine it will happen again. You can't eradicate a plant. This is my view about the war on drugs and tobacco. And alcohol is if something's natural and people enjoy using it, then they always will. What will be interesting to see how much technology takes over, and the rise of e-cigarettes and safer forms of nicotine consumption may well just simply make cigarettes and cigar smoking obsolete because people can enjoy their preference for nicotine without the risks. I think that's pretty likely to happen. But in general, I think we have to pray that the nanny state in general goes out of fashion, and the
Here. Yeah.
this wave of
Oh,
lifestyle
nice.
regulation, because it's obviously not just about smoking, it's about sugar and soda and things like this, particularly at the moment. This wave of very hardline and coercive paternalism that we've seen rising up over the last 20 or 30 years, there has to be a backlash against that. We need to go.
Yeah, you raise a really interesting point, and I don't think I thought of it quite that way, but it does seem to be that paternalism is somewhat in fashion at the moment.
Well, I like the term that you used, Chris, there, coercive paternalism.
Yeah.
That seems to kind of hit the spot a little better than the nanny state or even the bully state.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you agree, because that's one of the themes running through my next book, which out in a few months. So.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
And what's the title of that book? Are you allowed to share it?
I think I can share it. It's probably going to be called Killjoys and Scofflaws. But bear in mind that that's a working title, and none of my working titles have ever ended up being the title of the book. That can easily change. At the moment, it's being called that.
But I assume that people will be able to look for news of that on your blog. Is that right?
Oh yes, I'll be announcing on the blog, and the book will be free to download because it's an Institute of Economic Affairs publication.
That's wonderful. Thank you. One thing I wanted to just to get into a little bit was just that I find it interesting now that it's very apparent the authoritarian nature of smoking bans, and there's certain countries that have very authoritarian governments who are actually being praised by the World Health Organization for their anti-smoking actions. For instance, in the Philippines right now, President, if I pronounce his name correctly, President Duterte is set to introduce a nationwide public smoking ban in the Philippines. I mean, he's notorious for his war on drugs, which has killed, I think, at least a couple thousand suspected drug dealers. And he once even reportedly forced a tourist to swallow a cigarette butt. So, I mean, what is it about smoking bans? Do they appeal to the authoritarian nature? I know that they're becoming worldwide at this point, but...
Generally, yeah. I mean, it's well known to the point of cliche that Hitler was a great anti-smoker and a great non-drinker as well. And then the Nazis were not the first people to bring in smoking bans, because, as I say, they've been going on off and on for hundreds of years, but they really went for it, and they invented the term passive smoking, passive rauchen.
And they actually did a lot of, they did scientific research into smoking as well.
That is true. They did some of the early epidemiological evidence on smoking. Yeah, and you should never say that just because the Nazis did something is evil per se. It's an easy arguing point, really. But to answer your question, yes, it does tend to be the way that tyrannical governments tend to boss people around in terms of their lifestyle choices, not their health, but it's all sorts.
Chris, we have a lot of disparate people who are kind of on the same side vis-a-vis smoking and the nanny state. What do you think the strategy should be of, let's say, people like you and people like Frank Richards, is his name?
Frank Davis.
Frank Davis, and let's say, you probably know Michael McFadden and Audrey Silk and our group, Cambridge Citizens for Smokers' Rights.
Well, strategy is not my strong point. I'm not really a campaigner. I'm a writer, and I hope I can, give information that's useful to people who are activists or campaigners. I mean, my kind of work over the last number of years has been about exposing the untruths and the bad science that is so often used by the public health lobby to go about their business. If people can take that and spread that message, then fantastic. But in terms of political action, it's very, very difficult, quite obviously, when you're a minority, a dwindling minority at that. I don't know anything about legal challenges. I don't know much about how you mobilize people necessarily, what you should say to politicians. So I'm afraid I can't really help.
Chris, we're getting towards the end of our time.
Yeah, so Chris, we're gonna say goodnight. I want to briefly show a photo of your blog before we sign off, but I want to thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoyed having you.
Good night, Chris.
Good
My
night.
pleasure. Fly by. Thanks.
Yeah.